So without further pause, I'm going to introduce our first speaker. His name's Matt Hunckler. He's a huge guy. I'm excited for him to be here. He's the president of Verge. He's an Orr Fellow. He pretty much has an awesome resume. He was at the IU Kelley School of Business, and he's pretty much the king of excitement in Indianapolis. So without further pause, I'm going to give it over to Matt.
Thank you. Today. My story is kind of about inspiration and evolution. There's a lot of awesome people in this room right now, and it's a real privilege to be here because I know Rose is an awesome school. Some of my best friends all went to Rose. Some of my best business partners went to Rose. So I'm very honored to be here. I grew up in West Lafayette, where there is another engineering school there, but I won't drop the P word today. I'm taking it back to the streets, though, so I want to tell you where it all started for me. No, I did not grow up on the streets, but I did grow up in a lower middle class family, fairly comfortable living in West Lafayette, which is where I grew up. And because it was a lower middle class family, I would go to the stores, and I was a kid, right? And I would always be like, I want that. And my mom would always be like, no, maybe when you have your own money, you can buy whatever you want. But until then, you can't. So I was on the streets. I was selling newspapers. First thing you can legally do as a kid, tried the lemonade stand thing. Not a lot of foot traffic in my neighborhood, so it didn't work out. But the paper route thing did, and that just gave me my first taste of self-empowerment. I later found out that you can buy whatever you want when you have your own money. It was kind of a BS promise. But I don't know how many times I had to return that paintball gun to Kmart, but it was a fun process, and I did have a lot of different passions, right? Like I found things that inspired me, and I would chase them down. And one of them was DJing. Somehow, hip-hop was kind of the music of my generation, right, of our generation. So I was really into hip-hop music. I was really into kind of EDM, electronic dance music, and I just followed that passion. So I bought some turntables. Later found out I wasn't too psyched about standing behind a table while everyone else was having fun partying, and I had to just basically create the party for other people. That's foreshadowing for what I did later in life. But what I did was I took vinyl records, and this was my first real business. And the reason I started it was out of necessity. I wanted to go to Europe so badly. I got hooked up with this people-to-people student ambassador group. But I didn't have $6 grand laying around in my bank account. Even if I had saved up every 10 cents for every paper I delivered for the entire time I had the route, I would not have been able to afford to go to Europe for 4 weeks. So I had to get creative. And so I took one of the things I had purchased, which was in the rich dad terms, so Robert Kiyosaki was one of my like early pop business authors that I read all of his books when I was like a junior in high school. And I tried to turn a liability, which technically it's an asset, but it wasn't producing cash, and it was just sitting there basically depreciating in value in my house. So I took it and tried to turn it into an asset, something that you're generating cash from. And that was the first thing I tried to do that with. And so I took vinyl records and would digitize them, put them on CD, and return it to them for a small fee, a very small fee. That was my first lesson in pricing. I grossly underpriced my services. But it caught on. It was viral. It kind of in town, it was known that there was this kid trying to raise money to do a student ambassador thing. So it was my first lesson in cause marketing. And finally made enough cash to go to Europe. And that was life-changing for me. It changed my perspective on what a career could be. And, it was interesting because once I did that, I never really went back and started the business again. It was kind of like, cool, that served its purpose, done, right? And now it's time to be a senior in high school and mess around and do nothing other than, coast on the grades that I had accumulated already and got into what I was doing. And this whole time I'm thinking, what is my passion, right? Because everyone keeps telling you when you're in school, find your passion and the money will follow, or do what you love and you'll never work a day in your life, right? But you're 16, 17, 18, even by the time you're in your mid-20s, which I am, how do you know what the hell your passion is, right? Like, who's to say this is the one thing that I'm going to do? Follow your passion. I don't know what my passion is. So that kind of became my quest, right? And so I actually was lucky enough to have a mom as a guidance counselor, lucky or unlucky, depending on how you look at it. My mom was a guidance counselor, so was getting hit by multiple directions from the school guidance counselors and the Purdue guidance counselors that all wanted me to go to school there, and my mom, who was just saying, well, you draw all the time, which I did. I was a huge nerd. I drew like comics all day in class. I was totally like ADD. And so, like, in class, I found these this morning and took an iPhone photo of them. But it got to the point where my mom was kind of, she was a career counselor. So she said, if you were an architect, you could draw and people would pay you for that. And you could do what you love, you follow your passion and the money follows. I'm like, that sounds like the propaganda I've been signing up for. So I started drawing photos or pictures of different buildings. And, fell in love with Frank Lloyd Wright. And one day, I was just out around West Lafayette drawing buildings, and some business guy came out and took note, and he was like, hey, why are you always out here? Awesome. Why are you always out here? Does this work? All right. It doesn't yet. But you want me to give it back? Some guy took note, saw me out there following my passion, which was drawing buildings, because I'm like, oh, I'm drawing buildings. I'm going to get paid for this someday. Awesome. I was a very intentional kid. But what was awesome was an opportunity came out of it. I got my first internship as a senior in high school, which was as basically an unlicensed architect. So they call that a CAD detailer, computer automated design technician, I think is what it was something ridiculous. But I followed my dream, and kind of all in a matter of a year, which is about how long things are supposed to take when you're in high school, right? But that was probably too long. But I got to do what I love. Like I still have these, pretty much the only thing I have to show from this internship. I still have these like technical drawings with all kinds of reveals and electrical outlays, and it was supposed to be my passion, what I wanted to do. This is what I had worked so hard for, right? And really, it was not so hard. It was a year of really drawing buildings and being out there and being in this. What I found out from that internship is probably what you're supposed to find out from an internship. Either this is for me or this is not for me. I quickly learned that the internship, which looked a little more like this, was not quite for me. Hours a day sitting at a laptop in a room with 3 other architects. They were the licensed ones. So basically we did the exact same job, except they had a rubber stamp because they went to school for it for like 10 years. And they did the rubber stamp thing. And I'm totally not knocking architecture, because I still think it is an awesome thing, and I follow it all the time. But I knew that for me, the creative aspect wasn't there, at least not in the next 3 decades, the way architecture kind of goes. And I'd done enough research for that. So it was like, okay, time to pivot, back to the passion trail. We're now getting a nice beeping sound from the laptop. All right, so then I started to think, maybe I just needed to ask a better question. Not what is my passion, but what inspires me. And so there were a lot of things that inspired me. You know, as a kid, I grew up in a college town, so we had all these awesome classes I could take for free, just like walk across the street, and I could take dance lessons, or I would have guitar. What else did I play? Violin, saxophone. I took magic lessons. You know, just all kinds of random things like that. And I would follow those passions. And, you know, then I started to think, you know, I'm going to start looking like these guys if I'm not careful, right? Like some people with just like crazy hobbies, you know, parakeet and assault rifle with Bowie knife in hand. So I'm like, all right, I got to figure out this journey thing. So I'm still a freshman in college. I'd already signed up to go to that other engineering school in West Lafayette, because I thought, well, you know, I could get a structural engineering degree. Seems like the tougher degree to get. So I'm going to do that. It's going to set me up to be an architect. Well, I'm here, you know, first semester at Boilermaker University. And I'm like, I don't want to do this. I'm out. Can I call an audible? So I did. So I did. I wanted to get a little bit uncomfortable. Get outside my boundaries. I actually transferred to IU, found out that they had a good entrepreneurship program there. It kind of harkened back to the days that I had found a way to make money with digitizing those vinyl records, and got myself to IU. Now that's not really an inexpensive thing to do. If any of you have ever transferred to universities or are considering it, there are considerable costs, especially when scholarships are involved, because all of a sudden scholarships are not involved once you transfer from the original university you were at. So it had to be really worth it to me, and it was. And so I'm still on this road to find my passion. I'm like, what is it? Maybe it's money. Maybe money is my passion. Maybe if I just get the money, then I'll have more freedom and I can figure out what my passion is. So I found the highest paying job I could find for the summer between my freshman and sophomore year, because I was going to need it. My scholarships were going to go away until I proved myself again in the university's eyes. So I followed an ad in the newspaper that said I could make $30,000 in a summer, and I was stupid enough to believe it. So I found myself selling Kirby vacuum cleaners. How many of you have heard of Kirby vacuum cleaners? How many of you have had a Kirby vacuum cleaner person in your house? I'm sorry. Unless it was me, in which case it was probably delightful. So this guy is like from the 30s or something. I don't know when this photo is actually taken. This is how people still sell Kirby vacuum cleaners, door to door, to people that don't necessarily want to buy a vacuum cleaner from you, or even be in the market for a vacuum cleaner. What I found out, though, is everybody's in the market for a new vacuum cleaner, even if you have hardwood floors. So I got pretty good at doing these things because it was kind of the summer already, and before I realized that what I had signed up for as an internship wasn't selling high technology heavy equipment. It was vacuum cleaners, door to door. And by that time, I didn't have any other options, so I'm like, I'm in it. Let's go. And it was a hot, hot summer, and you literally lug this 80-pound vacuum cleaner with you door to door, and you get the person at the door to invite you in to show you show them the vacuum cleaner. And so I did that. I did once in a month over 75 demos in 1 month. And sometimes I'd be in a house 2 or 3 hours. Sometimes I'd be there 4, 5, 6 hours at a time. And what that taught me was you have to be able to talk to people and relate to people, and to be in a house for that long, one-on-one with somebody, when they weren't necessarily planning on having some college kid come in and talk to them about buying a $2,000 vacuum cleaner. Oh yeah, they were expensive too, by the way. To make $30,000 in a summer, which I did not, but that was the promise, and I was still like, that's the goal, $30,000 in one summer. But I did end up doing pretty well, and I would go back to the things that inspired me before, you know, on this like inspiration and passion journey, right? Like in the pursuit of finding the passion, you know, some people are passionate about music. Well, I could talk for ages about guitars or saxophones or violins, or some people are passionate about dance, and I had stepped into some salsa dance classes when I was a junior in high school, or I would do magic tricks for hours on end. And by the end of that summer, I was pretty sure that my calling was not a vacuum cleaner salesman, but I was set up to do some other things, and what it did help me do was find my next passion. I was like, I kind of like doing magic tricks. David Blaine had just hit the scene. Stuff had blown up, and people were like, have you seen this David Blaine guy? And I'm like, I can do that. And so I did. And I'm not saying that I can do it as well as David Blaine, because he's a very, very good performer. But I found myself just doing these card tricks at frat parties and things like that my freshman year of college, and some alumnus was there and said, you know, can you come and do my birthday party? And I said, yeah, but it's going to cost you. And so he was like, oh, well, how much? And I tried to throw out the most obscene number I could think of, which was $100. And so he gave me $100 on the spot and said, I'll see you in 2 weeks. And that was my first gig. Again, a lesson in pricing. I later realized, though, that was not something that was sustainable, right? So going back to Robert Kiyosaki's kind of books, I was like very aware that I was self-employed. I wasn't necessarily an entrepreneur. Yes, I was creating my own position, so I didn't have a boss to report to, but I didn't have a business that kind of ran, that had a life of its own, that generated cash and created value in a way that leveraged a business model. So I went about thinking, all right, how can I do that? And then I read tons of books on that and talked to all kinds of mentors that, you know, were amused by my door-to-door salesman experiences and professional magician shenanigans, and which is actually a great thing to do in a first meeting, to just really make an impression. But I don't do that quite so much anymore. But I found myself thinking, all right, the internet is something that has plugged me into all these passions, and I loved it because I could go and just chase down one passion or interest for a day, right? Like I would find one person I found fascinating, like Bob Dylan. What's that dude all about? And I would watch every documentary I could find on him. I'd read all about him, and then I would try to learn his songs, and then I would try to write like Bob Dylan and draw like Bob Dylan, and then it was Tuesday, and Bob Dylan's done, right? Next thing, right? So shiny object syndrome, because I was young and just chased all kinds of different things. But I thought, all right, well, how can I use this internet thing to start a business? And so that's what I went about trying to do. And I took a concept from the book E-Myth. So if you haven't read E-Myth, I highly recommend reading it. It's a really quick read. It's like that thick. But I could condense it down for you in one sentence, which is work on the business, not in the business, right? And that was like my mantra for like 3 years. Work on the business, not in the business. Don't be the person punching widgets. Don't be the person putting the needle on the record and operating the software. You know, find a way for that to function without you, and continually remove yourself from the systems as you create those systems. And so that's what I try to do with a web design company. And again, just being too stupid for my own good, I was just like, all right, well, I know how to sell stuff, and I don't have to knock on doors, so I'll just email people, right? Not necessarily the best way of going about doing that, but I had read a couple books, more than a couple books, and I subscribed to some newsletters, and I was just getting their email newsletters. And I saw someone who is a New York Times bestselling author write, I'm having trouble ranking for my name on Google, which is ridiculous because he had hisname.com, which you should just always be ranked #1 if you have yourname.com on Google. So I had been taking a class, which I think you can do this at Rose too, which I think is insane value if you're not taking advantage of it. But at IU, you could audit a class, which means you pay $25 and you get to attend the entire class and participate as if you're a normal student. So like, as someone that's paying for college, that's freaking awesome, right? Because you get all the value, except the credit hours, right? But I had transferred credits and had credits out I had a lot of credits, so I didn't need the credits, but I was taking this SEO class, and so I just sent him some quick tips, and he said, I had over 100 people email me, he's a very well-known author, over 100 people email me, but I would love for you to help me with this thing. I was like, wow. Yeah, no problem. We can help you with that, right? Because when you start your own business, it's always we, right? Even though it's like me sitting in my gym shorts in my dorm room. But yeah, we can help you with that, no problem. And so I had created a whole brand around it, SureSight Design, and from there, he wanted a website, and so I would find these people that would actually do the manual tasks. Again, I was like, I know how to do this, and I can talk the talk. I know how to sell, but I'm not going to be the one that's doing it. My team is going to help with that. So then it was time to get the capital, right? And so what did I do? I sold my only real possession. I wasn't going to sell my guitar. My only real possession, I sold my car at the beginning of the summer. This is after my first year at IU, so this is after my sophomore year. I'm going to sell my car. This is a really sexy car, right? This is back in the 90s when teal was like the cool color to have. So this is a 96 Dodge Intrepid. And so I sold my car for like, I don't know, $1,500 or something ridiculous like that. And just started assembling the team. So I had my designers were in Romania, my developers were in India, and some of them were across the street in the informatics department because I definitely realized that there was value of being face-to-face with someone and actually having a conversation and showing up to a meeting with multiple people when you're always talking in the royal we. So I started to develop a list of clients there. And always knowing that I wanted to take myself out of the sales role eventually and be able to work, again, on the business, not in the business. And so I got really good at this. And no, I don't mean meeting with multinational people and this very politically correct stock photo. But I did get very good at connecting with people in networking groups like Rainmakers or Chamber of Commerce events. And again, getting good at just connecting with people, specifically connecting with adults, right? So as a student, that's one thing that I could say is very, very good skill to develop and start to build because I know it's something that can seem very, one, it might not even seem like fun because as a kid, you're like, oh, old people, they're no fun. They just need to make money so they can pay their mortgage and buy a car, and that's not the case. Like, life just gets more and more exciting the older you get, especially if you're talking to entrepreneurial people, because as they get older, they get more experiences and they open more doors and they're continually expanding their horizons. So, for me, I got like addicted to that, like finding these people that had experiences to share and learning from those experiences, and in the process, getting a really nice book of clients. So at the same time, during that process, some of that took me up to Indianapolis, but again, I didn't have a car. So I carpooled up there, and it, just one of those serendipitous things. The person I happened to carpool with, his name's Brennan Knotts. I was hanging out with him last night. He was in town from Chicago. He was a student at the time, but little did I know he joined this thing called the Orr Fellowship. Any of you guys heard of the Orr Fellowship? I see a couple Orr fellows in the back. I didn't get a good count. How many people have... So about half. That's awesome. That's way better than when I started there. So the Orr Fellowship is a program for recent graduate students. You get paired with a seasoned entrepreneur who's growing a high-growth business. Scott Jones and Mark Hill were the people that brought me up to Indianapolis and convinced me to sell my business and join this program, learn to do business on, tens and hundreds of millions of dollars level, not tens and hundreds of thousands of dollar level. And again, it wasn't about the money. I had already learned that lesson from selling vacuum cleaners door to door, because I could have made six figures if I had continued to do that, in the first year. But that wasn't inspiring to me, or that again wasn't my passion. Right? I'm still on this quest to find my passion. And these guys, Mark Hill and Scott Jones, are some of the forefathers of technology in Indiana. They really created the great software companies of Indiana, and they've helped fund and fuel the other companies around Indiana and even in companies outside the state. And so I was lucky enough to become a part of this Orr Fellowship program. I sold my company for enough money to pay off my student loans. So that was a really great experience. Got to rub shoulders with some cool people. Not to go back to the P word, but you know this guy. He's the governor currently, so we don't even have to talk about Purdue. I said it. Dang it. So So I also got to lead the marketing department at a Inc. 500 company called Slingshot. And that happened just because I was doing what I loved. I was doing what I was passionate about. And what I had found that my passion for was connecting with other technologists. The more I got embedded in the web, the more I was fascinated by software technology and how you could create something very valuable from nothing. And I'm sure that I'm really looking forward to Jeff's talk because he's the master of talking about that because he's done it so systematically time and time again. And I hope you talk about the Walmart strategy because this slide was inspired by that. And I began taking lists, once, and I was actually after one of Jeff's talks. He was one of the first Orr Fellowship talks when I got to Indianapolis. I just started documenting all of my different ideas of businesses. These are more for comical relief, not actual ideas. But, I found my way to trying to find other people that had these ideas, had business ideas, and that were taking action on them. And so we just thought, well, let's get together and grab beers. So this is me holding a solo cup of local brew in Indy, and see who else comes. Right? It's just kind of just do it. Right? I don't know why. I was just felt like the right thing to do. Well, it turns out there's a lot of other people that are passionate about startup technology and software, and our little 12-person group, which I was like, I'm going to find every entrepreneurial person I can in Indianapolis, and I'm going to make them come to this thing. And, for the first 6 months, that was like 12 to 18 people that I could get there consistently. And then once we started, building in some of the marketing tactics and strategies, and I don't want to talk about any of that stuff today, unless you guys have questions about them later. But, we basically infused some of that. Social media got big, which, again, by the way, plug for, what is it? Startup Rose 12 is the hashtag. Little social media plug. It just kind of blew up. So we called this thing Verge. And we now have over 2,000 members, which are software developers, entrepreneurs, investors all around Indiana. And we've done events all over Indiana, South by Southwest in Austin. We do small events like this. We do larger events. And so the key there is just to find 1,000 true fans. And once you have those 1,000 true fans, things just kind of grow from there. And the way I found, and there's a really good article, by the way, if you just type in 1,000 true fans into Google, read it later. It's all about this idea of tipping the scale, right? The Malcolm Gladwell tipping point. But I try to think like Grandma Hunckler, which is my grandma. And she has 9 sons and daughters and 30-some grandchildren, and she could give you all the stats, but I can't even give you the stats. But she knows all of us, and every time I sit down with her, even if it's been 4 or 5 months, it's like we just talked yesterday, and she remembers everything that I'm doing, and she asks, well, how did that conference go, and how did that business venture go? And she's like 90-something now, but it's just incredible. Like, when you talk to her, you're the only person in the room. And so I don't do as good a job at this as she does, but I strive to do that because that's the thing that gets you the 1,000 true fans. You really care about people. Up to 1,000 people, you can have one-on-one conversations. You can text back when someone says, hey, man, couldn't register for Verge. Can I get in? And it's like, yeah, no problem. We'll figure it out. Let's do this thing at the door. Now that it's 2,000 some people, we've got to kind of have systems and processes in place. But it's consistent fundamentals, right? So How to Win Friends and Influence People was a book that was handed to me before I should be reading such books because my grandpa went through the Dale Carnegie program, my dad went through the Dale Carnegie program, and now I've gone through the Dale Carnegie program. And it's cool because I actually have 3 different editions, one with my grandfather's notes in it, one with my dad's notes in it, and one with my notes in it, yellow pages, really, really yellow, tattered pages, kind of dog-eared pages, and then the brand new book, which mine is on a Kindle. So, but kind of the main point of this is to simply evolve, right? Like I'm still on that journey right now, and we just pulled off a really big conference in Indianapolis, which was the first startup conference of its kind in Indy. We did multiple days. And it's all because the only reason that worked is because so many people on the team helped me through that process. And if there's one thing that's helped me through this is just not being afraid to fail. And I failed a bunch, right? Not to harken back to the vacuum cleaner days too much, but like that just kind of made me numb to failure, right? Because to get into a house, you'd have to knock on 5 to 10 doors before you actually get in. And then once you get in, your chances of selling a $2,000 to $3,000 piece of machinery to someone who just spent $150 at Walmart for a Hoover, it's a hard sell, right? So you're going to face a lot of rejection. But as part of it, I think that if you just go for it and it's going to be a journey, then I think people will always be there to help you. And the people in this room today, the people you're going to talk to for the rest of the day today, I hope you'll get outside your comfort zone. You're probably sitting next to a buddy right now or someone that you know. Maybe at the next break, switch it up. Go sit by someone new and talk to them. Talk to them at lunch and go about seeing how you can help them and how you might learn something from them. So I don't know if I even have time for questions. Probably not. But you can catch me. I'll be here the rest of the day. So hopefully we can talk.
All right. That was an awesome speech. Right now we're going to go into our first panel. So if I could get Bo Darcy, Elizabeth Hagerman, and Yvette up on stage. They'll be fielding questions right now. So I just want to thank Matt again. That was an awesome speech. I'm starting to see that type of evolution here at Rose. I'm seeing it in a lot of students that are at the club itself. I just hope that this journey can continue. Right now, this panel is going to be about idea creation. So Matt was talking about it a lot. He went through like 4 or 5 different business ideas to finally hit a winner. He's going to be in the process of that. There are some people in this room who are always in the process of figuring out what's the next big thing. How am I going to change the world? But we run into roadblocks.